So our last task involves using CTE tables, which are kind of like temporary tables that you create and then you can display information from them, just as you would a normal table. So for the first one, the boss wants us to create a CTE table named Summary that includes vendor and invoice information. And then we need to retrieve vendor information for invoices that are larger than 1,000. So we're going to use AP for this. We've named our CTE table Summary, and the with and as clause are how you create CTE tables. Then you'll notice we have a subquery in here. So we're selecting the vendor state, vendor name, and the invoice total. We're joining invoices and vendors on the vendor ID. So this creates a table, temporary table with 3 columns. To access those columns, we have to use another select. And we prefix each column with our CTE table name. So we have summary.vendor-state, summary.vendor-name, summary.invoice-total. Those are coming from the summary table. And we want to display rows where summary.invoice-total is greater than 1,000. And then we're going to sort by summary.vendor-state. So we'll go ahead and run it. Whoops. And then what you're seeing for each vendor would be what is greater than 1,000. So some vendors may have multiple invoices, some may only have one. So that is the first one. The second one is much more complicated. So for the second one, what we want to display, our ultimate goal is to count the number of employees that report to each manager. And that sounds super simple. It actually requires quite a bit of work. The manager and employee information are in the Northwind employees table. So the information is in the same table. So if you want to total up information for managers, that is actually a little bit more tricky than you might think. So we are going to use the CTE table for this that we're naming EMP CTE. We're going to do a couple selects in this table, and we're including the exact same columns, so we can actually do a union and come up with one result set. So it's going to take the 2 selects and combine them. The first select is basically employees that don't have a manager. Reports to is the manager they're reporting to. And so these would be employees that don't have a manager. The second select, we want the employee and whatever manager they report to. Okay, so that is the goal of the second select. So you can see we're doing the same information, but because we're pulling from employees like the one above, we do need to give it an alias. And then we're actually joining this inner select with the results of the first select. So it's going to be comparing the employee ID to see if that is equal to reports to. So basically we're looking at this and we're seeing if this is equal to the employee ID. Kind of a weird concept, but it's like a self-join. So we're going to run this. And you can see from our first results that there is only one that has null. Okay? And this is employee ID number 2. Now, if you look down here, number 2 is a manager that quite a few of the employees are reporting to. And that manager doesn't report to anybody. so it is the head honcho. Okay, then employee number 5 is also a manager. So what we want instead of this is we just basically want a little bit of a tally so that we know, how many people, how many employees report to manager 2 and how many employees report to manager 5. So that requires adjusting this select just a little bit. So instead of selecting everything, we are going to select reports to, and then we want a count of reports to. So basically, we just want to tally this last column. And we'll give it a little heading of number of employees. And remember, when you use an aggregate and a column that doesn't have an aggregate, you do need to have a group by. Okay, so when we run this, what we should see is a total for manager 2 and a total for manager 5. And we're going to go ahead and execute. And we have a total for null, which is no one, so 0 makes perfect sense. Okay, so this is giving us the total number of employees that report to each manager, which is what our boss asked for. So at this point, you're going to save your changes and turn this in.